The morning the HOA first noticed my generator was running, I was 3,000 miles away in a Houston hospital, watching my father struggle to breathe through a ventilator. I had been in Coral Ridge, Florida barely 6 months, having bought my house in the Pleasant Valley subdivision specifically because it was supposed to be a quiet place where nobody bothered you. That promise lasted exactly until Patricia Henderson from the HOA decided my backup generator was her personal business. My name is Yuri Volkov, and I am an IT security consultant who works from home. When I bought the house on Magnolia Drive, I made sure to install a high-end natural gas generator that could power my entire operation if the main grid went down. Florida is not exactly known for stable power, especially during hurricane season, and my job requires me to maintain uptime for several critical clients. The generator was permitted, inspected, and fully legal. I even made sure it was the quietest model on the market, positioned on the far side of my property away from neighbors. The system was designed to kick on automatically if power failed, and I had also set it up with remote monitoring so I could check on my house systems while traveling. That proved useful when I got the alert on my phone that the generator had activated due to a transformer failure in our neighborhood. I was sitting in that uncomfortable hospital chair, holding my father's hand, when I checked the app and saw everything was running smoothly. The generator was providing power to my home security system, my servers, and all the environmental controls that kept my equipment from frying in the Florida heat. 3 days later, while I was still in Texas dealing with funeral arrangements because my father had not made it, I received an email from Patricia Henderson, president of the Pleasant Valley HOA. The subject line read, "Violation Notice, Excessive Noise Disturbance." I opened it on my phone while sitting in the funeral home, and the contents made my blood pressure spike at exactly the wrong moment. According to Patricia, my generator had been running continuously for 72 hours, creating what she called an intolerable disruption to the peaceful enjoyment of the neighborhood. She cited Section 14.7 of the HOA covenants, which stated that no machinery creating excessive noise shall be operated for extended periods without prior board approval. The fine was $500 for the first 3 days, with an additional $250 per day if the violation continued. She demanded I shut down the generator immediately or face further penalties. I sat there in that funeral home, smelling the flowers and listening to the director drone on about casket options, and I felt something inside me just snap. My father was dead. I was dealing with estate paperwork, memorial services, and the trauma of watching someone I loved slip away. And this woman was sending me threatening emails about a generator that was literally the only thing keeping my house secure and my business operational during a legitimate power outage. I called the power company from the funeral home parking lot. After navigating their phone tree for 15 minutes, I finally reached a human who confirmed that yes, the transformer serving my neighborhood had failed and repairs were expected to take 4 to 6 days. They were waiting on parts. So my generator was doing exactly what it was supposed to do, providing backup power during an extended outage that was completely beyond my control. I forwarded that information to Patricia along with a polite but firm email explaining that I was out of state dealing with a family emergency, that the generator was operating legally during a power outage, and that I would not be shutting it down until main power was restored. I attached copies of my permits, the manufacturer specifications showing the unit operated at 58 decibels from 50 feet away, which was quieter than normal conversation, and the power company's confirmation of the outage. Her response came back in less than an hour. The HOA board has reviewed your response and finds it insufficient. The covenants clearly state that extended machinery operation requires approval regardless of circumstances. Your fine now totals $1,250. You have 24 hours to comply, or we will pursue legal action, including potential foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure. Over a generator running during a power outage while I was burying my father. I made it through the funeral in a fog. My sister helped with most of the arrangements because I kept getting distracted by increasingly aggressive emails from Patricia. She sent me photographs of my generator, which meant she had apparently been trespassing on my property to take pictures through my fence. She sent me what she claimed were noise complaints from neighbors, though the names were redacted so I could not verify if they were real. She sent me a formal notice that the HOA board had voted to assess additional fines and had authorized their attorney to file a lien against my property. The power came back on the day after the funeral. I was on a flight back to Florida when I got the notification that main power had been restored, and the generator had switched off after running for 5.5 days. I landed at Fort Lauderdale International exhausted, grieving, and absolutely furious. When I got home, I found 2 certified letters waiting. One was from the HOA's attorney, a man named Richard Sampson who apparently specialized in covenant enforcement. The letter detailed fines now totaling $3,750 and demanded payment within 10 days, or they would proceed with filing a lien. The second letter was from Patricia personally, informing me that I was being summoned to appear before the HOA board at their next meeting to explain my flagrant disregard for community standards. I spent the weekend researching. I read every single page of the HOA covenants, the Florida state statutes governing homeowners associations, and every case precedent I could find about generator use and emergency power. What I discovered was that Patricia and her board were so far out of line they might as well have been in a different state. Florida Statute 720.3045 specifically protected the right of homeowners to operate emergency generators during power outages. The statute had been updated after Hurricane Irma to prevent HOAs from interfering with backup power systems. My generator was properly permitted with the county, which meant it complied with all noise ordinances. And the HOA's own covenants, buried in Section 23.4, explicitly stated that reasonable emergency measures to protect property during utility failures shall not be considered violations. I contacted 3 attorneys that Monday. The first 2 gave me standard advice about negotiating with the HOA and potentially settling for a reduced fine. The third attorney, a woman named Sarah Chen who specialized in HOA disputes, laughed when I told her the story. "They have no case," she said over the phone. "None whatsoever. You could fight this and probably win damages for harassment and emotional distress, especially given the timing with your father's passing. But litigation is expensive and time-consuming, even when you are in the right." "So what do you suggest?" I asked. "Document everything. Go to the meeting, record it if Florida's 2-party consent law allows, or at least take detailed notes. Let them make their case. Don't get emotional, just present the facts. If they continue to push, then we file a response that will make them seriously reconsider." I liked Sarah. She was practical and direct. I paid her retainer and felt slightly better having someone competent in my corner. The HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at 7 o'clock in the community clubhouse. I arrived at 6:55 with a folder full of documents and my phone ready to record. Florida is a two-party consent state, so I could not secretly record, but I could openly record if I announced it. The clubhouse was a beige building with all the charm of a discount dentist office. The meeting room had about 30 folding chairs arranged in rows facing a long table where the board members sat. Patricia Henderson occupied the center position like a judge. She was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, blonde hair in a helmet-like style that probably required weekly maintenance, wearing a blazer over a floral blouse despite the Florida heat. To her right was Donald Crane, the vice president, a retired accountant with a perpetual scowl. To her left was Margaret Simmons, the secretary, a nervous-looking woman in her 60s who kept fidgeting with her pen. About a dozen residents were scattered in the audience seats. I recognized a few neighbors, but had not really gotten to know anyone yet given how little time I had been in the community before my father's illness pulled me away. I took a seat in the front row. Patricia noticed me immediately, and her lips pressed into a thin line that might have been a smile but looked more like she was suppressing gas. "We will begin," Patricia announced, banging a wooden gavel on the table with more force than necessary. She ran through some standard business about landscaping contracts and pool maintenance, then turned her attention to me. "We have a special matter to address this evening. Mr. Volkov, would you please come forward?" I stood and walked to the front, turning to face the audience rather than the board. "Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that I will be recording this proceeding for my records." I held up my phone. Patricia's face flushed. "That is not permitted." Under Florida law, I have the right to record any meeting I am a party to as long as I announce it, which I just did. You can check with your attorney if you would like, but we will be waiting a while since this is clearly outside the scope of what you prepared for. Donald leaned over and whispered something to Patricia. She looked like she wanted to argue but finally waved her hand dismissively. "Fine. Record whatever you want. Now, you are here because you have flagrantly violated HOA covenants by running industrial machinery for nearly 6 days straight, disturbing the entire neighborhood and showing complete disregard for community standards. I ran a legally permitted backup generator during a confirmed power outage while I was out of state dealing with my father's death," I replied calmly. "The generator is specifically allowed under Florida state law, and your own covenants have an emergency exception. The law does not give you carte blanche to disturb your neighbors," Patricia shot back. "We have received numerous complaints." "From whom?" "Because you redacted the names, so I have no way to verify these complaints are legitimate or if you fabricated them." A murmur went through the small audience. Patricia's flush deepened. "How dare you accuse this board of fabrication? We have integrity." "Then provide the names of the complainants so I can address their concerns directly. We protect the privacy of residents." "Convenient." "So I am supposed to accept anonymous accusations as fact and pay thousands of dollars in fines based on evidence I cannot examine. That would not hold up in any legitimate proceeding." Margaret whispered something to Patricia, who ignored her. Donald was glaring at me like I had just insulted his mother. "Mr. Volkov," Patricia said, her voice dripping with forced patience, "this board has the authority under the covenants to assess fines for violations. Your generator operation exceeded reasonable limits. We have assessed appropriate penalties. The matter is not up for debate." I pulled out my folder and extracted several documents. "I have here the Florida statute protecting emergency generator use, my county permits showing the unit meets all noise ordinances, confirmation from the power company about the extended outage, and Section 23.4 of your own covenants allowing emergency measures." Which of these would you like to address first? This is not a courtroom, Donald interjected. We do not have to justify our decisions to you. Actually, under Florida law, you do. HOA boards are not dictatorships. You have to follow the law and your own governing documents. And right now, you are violating both. Patricia stood up, which seemed to be her power move. The fine stands. You have 10 days to pay or we will file a lien and pursue foreclosure. This meeting is over. No, it is not, I said, not moving, because I came here to give you a courtesy warning. If you file that lien, I will immediately countersue for harassment, abuse of authority, and violation of Florida statutes. I have an attorney on retainer who specializes in HOA disputes, and she is quite confident we will not only get your fines dismissed, but win damages. That will cost the HOA far more than the few $1,000s you are trying to extort from me. Extort? Patricia sputtered. How dare you? What would you call threatening foreclosure over a legally operated generator during a family emergency? Because I would call it extortion, harassment, and a gross abuse of your position. Several residents in the audience were nodding. One older man in the back actually started clapping before his wife shushed him. Patricia looked around, clearly not expecting public sentiment to shift. We are trying to maintain property values and quality of life in this community. No, you are trying to exercise power for its own sake. And I am telling you right now, if you do not withdraw these fines, this will end badly for you. I walked out of the clubhouse and did not look back. My hands were shaking from adrenaline, but I felt better than I had in weeks. Standing up to bullies always felt good, even when you were not sure how it would turn out. 2 days later, I received a letter from Richard Sampson, the HOA attorney. Instead of backing down, they had doubled down. The letter informed me that the board had voted to impose additional fines for insubordinate behavior during an official HOA meeting and making baseless accusations against board members. My total fine was now $6,000. I forwarded it to Sarah Chen. She called me within an hour and she was laughing. They are idiots, she said cheerfully. They just gave us everything we need. You cannot fine someone for speaking at a meeting or defending themselves. That is a clear First Amendment violation, not to mention a breach of their fiduciary duty. I am drafting a response that is going to make them wish they had never heard your name. How long will this take? I asked. Depends on how stupid they are. If they are smart, they will back down as soon as they see our response. If they are really stupid, we will end up in court and they will lose badly. I am betting on really stupid, I said. I was right. Sarah's response was a 15-page document citing chapter and verse of every law and covenant provision the board had violated. She demanded immediate withdrawal of all fines, a written apology, and compensation for my attorney fees. She gave them 7 days to respond. Patricia's response came on day 8. It was a single paragraph stating that the board rejected our demands and would be proceeding with the lien. The letter was so dismissive, it almost seemed like she had not bothered to read Sarah's detailed legal analysis. Okay, Sarah said when I forwarded it to her. We are going to court. This is actually better for you in the long run, because we can get a judgment that will protect you from any future harassment. We filed our lawsuit in Broward County Circuit Court 3 days later. The complaint detailed the entire timeline, attached all my documentation, and asked for dismissal of the fines, attorney fees, and $25,000 in damages for harassment and emotional distress during a family emergency. The HOA had 30 days to respond. During that time, something interesting happened. My generator became an issue again, but for a completely different reason. I was working from home on a Tuesday afternoon when my security system started sending alerts. I pulled up the camera feeds and saw two men in Pleasant Valley HOA polo shirts walking around my backyard, examining my generator. I grabbed my phone and headed outside. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I called out as I rounded the corner of my house. They both jumped slightly. One was young, maybe mid-20s, clearly a maintenance worker. The other was older, 50s, with a clipboard and an officious demeanor. "We are conducting an inspection," clipboard guy said. "I am Barry Morrison, facilities manager for the HOA. "Inspection of what? This is my private property." "The HOA has the right to inspect exterior equipment to ensure compliance with community standards." "No, you do not. Not without my permission, and certainly not by entering my backyard without notice. You are trespassing." Barry looked annoyed. "Listen, Mr. Volkov, we are just doing our jobs. The board wants a full report on your generator installation to determine if it meets setback requirements. The county already inspected it. It is permitted and compliant. Now please leave my property. We need to take measurements. No, get out before I call the police." The younger guy was already backing toward the gate, clearly uncomfortable. Barry tried to maintain his authority. "The board will hear about this obstruction." "I am sure they will, and my attorney will hear about your trespassing. Now leave." They left, but I knew this was not over. Patricia was escalating, trying to find any angle to justify her vendetta. I documented the incident, sent the security footage to Sarah, and added trespassing to our growing list of HOA violations. What I did not know at the time was that my generator had become much more important to the HOA than just a personal grudge. I would not learn this until much later, but it turned out that when the community was developed, the builder had run the security system for the neighborhood entrance gates, the clubhouse, and all the common area lighting through a junction box on my property. It was a cost-cutting measure, apparently, using my electrical service as part of the main trunk line for the community infrastructure. The original owner of my house had apparently never questioned this arrangement. But when I installed my generator, I had it configured to provide backup power to my entire electrical panel during outages, which meant, unbeknownst to me, my generator was also providing backup power to significant portions of the HOA's security and lighting systems. During that 5.5-day power outage, while Patricia was sending me threatening emails and taking photos of my generator, what she did not mention was that my generator was the only reason the neighborhood gates were still functioning. The clubhouse had power, and the common area lights were still on. The HOA's own backup system, a cheaper battery setup, had failed on day 2 of the outage. I only discovered this because of what happened next. 3 weeks after the trespassing incident, I received another letter from the HOA. This one was different. It was not from Patricia or the attorney. It was from Barry Morrison, the facilities manager, and it was marked Urgent Maintenance Notice. The letter explained that the HOA was upgrading the community electrical infrastructure and needed to perform work on the junction box located on my property. They requested access the following Tuesday between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. I called Barry directly. "What exactly are you doing to this junction box?" I asked. "Just standard maintenance and upgrades," he said vaguely. "Replacing some old wiring, installing new circuit breakers, that sort of thing." "Why is the HOA's infrastructure on my property to begin with?" There was a pause. "It is a legacy situation from when the community was built. The electrical for the common areas runs through service points on several properties, and my generator is connected to this system." Another pause, longer this time. "In a manner of speaking, Your electrical panel feeds into the main trunk line that serves some community features. So when my generator runs, it is powering HOA systems. That is not exactly how it works, but there is some crossover, yes. I thought about this for a moment. And during that power outage last month, was my generator powering the gate system? Look, Mr. Volkov, this is a complicated technical situation. The important thing is we need to do this maintenance work. The work that you are scheduling right after suing me for running the generator that was apparently keeping your systems operational. That timing seems interesting. I do not know anything about the legal matters. I am just facilities. Right. Well, I will need to see detailed plans for what you are doing and verify it will not affect my systems. Send me the technical specifications and I will review them with my electrician. We have a licensed contractor handling it. There will not be any issues. Then you will not mind providing the documentation. Email it to me and I will get back to you. I hung up and immediately called Sarah Chen. The HOA has been using my electricity, I told her, and probably my generator, and now they want access to my property to work on their systems. Do not let them on your property without a court order, Sarah said immediately. This changes everything. If they have been using your electrical service without compensation, they might owe you money. And if your generator was providing backup power to their systems, that completely undermines their entire case about it being a nuisance. Can we subpoena their electrical plans and maintenance records? Absolutely. I am going to file a motion for discovery immediately. This is going to be very interesting. The discovery process in our lawsuit uncovered exactly what I suspected. The HOA had been using my electrical service as a hub for community systems for years, probably saving thousands in infrastructure costs. During the power outage, my generator had kept the entrance gates operational, powered the security cameras, and provided electricity to the clubhouse and pool lighting. The HOA's own backup battery system had failed almost immediately. Internal emails between Patricia, Donald, and Barry revealed that they had known my generator was helping them. In fact, Barry had sent an email during the outage thanking fate that Volkov's new generator is keeping our systems running, or we would be in serious trouble with residents about security. Patricia's response to that email was illuminating. Do not mention this to anyone. Volkov does not need to know his systems are supporting community functions. Focus on the noise complaints. Sarah was delighted. They knew your generator was beneficial but fined you anyway because Patricia was on a power trip. This is bad faith on a level that could lead to significant damages. The HOA's attorney must have seen the same thing because 2 days after we submitted the discovered emails as exhibits, Richard Sampson called Sarah to discuss settlement. They are offering to drop all fines and pay $10,000 toward your attorney fees, Sarah told me after the call. What about the damages for harassment? They are not offering anything for that. Sampson is claiming it was just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that threatened my home with foreclosure while I was burying my father. I know. Do you want to push forward to trial? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see Patricia squirm on a witness stand, but I was tired. The lawsuit had been dragging on for 3 months now and I just wanted it over. Counter offer, I said. They drop all fines, pay $15,000 for attorney fees, issue a written apology from the board, and agree to formalize the electrical arrangement. I want either proper compensation for the use of my electrical service and generator, or I want them to completely separate their systems from my property so I am not providing them any benefit. That is fair. I will present it. Sampson took 2 days to respond. The HOA accepted the attorney fees and dropping the fines. agreed to the formal apology, but pushed back on the electrical situation. They wanted to maintain the current arrangement, but were willing to pay me a monthly fee for the use of my property and electrical service. "How much are they offering?" I asked Sarah. "200 per month, not enough. The potential liability if something goes wrong with their systems on my property, plus the wear on my generator when it provides them backup power, plus the simple aggravation of having their infrastructure on my property. I want 500 per month, or they completely remove their equipment and rewire their systems." This time the negotiation took a week. The HOA board had to vote on it, and apparently there was internal disagreement. Donald wanted to fight it out of spite. Margaret was worried about the costs of a trial. Patricia was notably quiet, according to the meeting minutes that Sarah subpoenaed. In the end, they agreed to 400 per month, which would cover my generator maintenance costs and compensate for the property use. We signed a formal easement agreement that documented the electrical arrangement, specified that I could operate my generator without restriction during power outages, and prohibited the HOA from interfering with my equipment. The written apology arrived a week later. It was boilerplate and clearly drafted by their attorney, but it formally acknowledged that the fines had been improper and that my generator operation had been legal and appropriate. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The settlement became public knowledge in the community, and apparently not everyone was happy with how Patricia had handled things. A group of residents started asking questions about HOA finances, legal expenses, and decision-making processes. Someone requested access to the records of attorney fees the HOA had paid for the case against me. It turned out Patricia and the board had spent nearly $40,000 in legal fees trying to collect $6,000 in bogus fines from me. When you added in the settlement they had to pay, the HOA was out of pocket over $50,000 because of Patricia's vendetta. A recall petition started circulating. Under Florida law and the HOA's bylaws, if 15% of homeowners signed a recall petition, it would trigger a special election to remove board members. The petition got the signatures in less than 2 weeks. Patricia tried to fight it, of course. She sent out an email to all residents claiming the recall was being organized by disruptive elements who do not respect community governance. She held an emergency board meeting to discuss options to prevent the vote. She even tried to change the bylaws to make recalls more difficult. But Sarah informed me that such a change would be illegal under Florida statute if done in response to a pending recall. The special election was held on a Saturday morning in October. I showed up to vote, and the turnout was remarkable. Usually, HOA elections got maybe 10% participation. This one had over 60% of homeowners casting ballots. Patricia, Donald, and Margaret were all removed from the board. The new board members included the older man who had clapped during my confrontation with Patricia, a retired attorney named James Wright, along with 2 younger residents who worked in business management and seemed to actually understand fiduciary responsibility. James was elected as the new president at the board's first meeting. One of his first acts was to commission a full audit of the HOA's finances and operations. What they found was disturbing. Patricia had been using HOA funds as her personal expense account. Over her 3 years as president, she had charged nearly $15,000 in community business expenses that were actually personal purchases. Dinners with friends that she claimed were board meetings. A trip to Atlanta that she said was for an HOA conference but was actually a vacation. Even regular purchases at high-end department stores that she categorized as office supplies. Donald had been complicit, approving the expenses without question. Margaret had apparently known but been too intimidated to speak up. The new board filed a police report. The Coral Ridge Police Department investigated and turned the case over to the Broward County State Attorney's Office. 6 months after I had first received that nasty email about my generator, Patricia Henderson was charged with 2 counts of grand theft and 4 counts of fraud. I followed the case through public records. Patricia tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that she had not realized personal expenses could not be charged to the HOA. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the state attorney's office pushed forward because the amount exceeded $15,000, making it a second-degree felony. The trial was relatively quick. The prosecution presented clear documentation of the fraudulent expenses. Patricia's own emails and credit card records showed she had deliberately categorized personal purchases as HOA business. The jury found her guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison followed by 5 years of probation, and ordered her to pay full restitution to the HOA plus additional fines. Donald cut a deal by testifying against Patricia, pleading guilty to a lesser charge, and receiving probation with community service. I attended the sentencing hearing. I am not usually vindictive, but after everything Patricia had put me through during one of the worst periods of my life, I wanted to see justice done. Patricia looked smaller in the courtroom than she had sitting at that HOA board table. She cried as the judge delivered the sentence, talking about how she had devoted years to the community and made simple mistakes. The judge was not sympathetic. "You were entrusted with your neighbor's money," the judge said. "You violated that trust repeatedly and deliberately. Your actions went far beyond simple mistakes. This sentence reflects the serious nature of your crimes." I walked out of the courthouse into the Florida sunshine, feeling like a weight had been lifted. It had been a long road from that hospital room in Houston, where I had first received Patricia's threatening email, to this moment of accountability. The new HOA board turned out to be reasonable and competent. They renegotiated vendor contracts, implemented transparent financial reporting, and generally ran the community like professionals rather than petty tyrants. James Wright personally apologized to me for how the previous board had treated me. "What Patricia did was unconscionable," he told me over coffee at the clubhouse. "You had every right to operate that generator, and harassing you during a family crisis was beyond the pale. The community owes you an apology." "I appreciate that," I said. "Honestly, I am just glad it is over." "How is your work going? I understand you do something with IT security." "I consult on cybersecurity systems for various clients. Part of why I needed the generator was to maintain uptime for critical systems." James nodded thoughtfully. "Would you be interested in helping us upgrade the community systems?" Barry Morrison, the facilities manager, mentioned that our electrical infrastructure is aging and we are relying on a patchwork of solutions that are not really adequate. "Given your expertise and the fact that our systems connect through your property, it might make sense to have you consult on a proper modernization." I thought about it. The professional opportunity was interesting, and it would give me more control over the systems running through my property. "I would be willing to take a look," I said. "No promises, but I can assess what you have and provide recommendations." That consultation turned into a 6-month project redesigning the community's electrical and security infrastructure. We separated the HOA systems from individual residential services, installed a proper backup generator system for the community, upgraded all the security cameras and access controls, and implemented a modern monitoring system. The work was interesting and lucrative. It also connected me with other HOAs in the area who heard about the project and wanted similar upgrades. My consulting business grew substantially. More importantly, I became involved in the community in a way I had not expected when I first moved to Pleasant Valley. I joined the Architectural Review Committee, helping evaluate requests for home improvements from a technical perspective. I found myself actually caring about the neighborhood and getting to know my neighbors. The house on Magnolia Drive had started as just a place to live, somewhere to work remotely and enjoy the Florida weather. After everything that happened with Patricia and the HOA lawsuit, it became something more. It became home. My generator still sits on the far side of my property, quiet most of the time but ready to kick on whenever needed. It is connected to my systems and mine alone now. The HOA has its own backup power, properly installed and maintained. And there is a formal easement agreement documenting the $400 per month they pay me for the use of my property where their junction box remains. Every month when I receive that check, I think about Patricia sitting in that courtroom, crying as the judge sentenced her. I do not take pleasure in her imprisonment exactly, but I do feel a sense of justice served. She tried to abuse her power to harass a resident during a family crisis, and the consequences caught up with her. The whole situation taught me several valuable lessons. First, document everything when dealing with an HOA or any authority structure. My meticulous records and security footage were crucial to defending myself. Second, know your rights. I took the time to research Florida statutes and the HOA's own covenants, which gave me the knowledge to push back effectively. Third, stand up to bullies even when it is difficult and expensive, because backing down only encourages more abuse. But perhaps the most important lesson was about community. I had moved to Pleasant Valley thinking I wanted to be left alone, to work remotely and not get too involved with neighbors and local politics. The conflict with Patricia forced me to engage, and that engagement ultimately led to positive changes not just for me, but for the entire community. The new board operates transparently. Residents actually show up to meetings now because they know their input matters. We have addressed deferred maintenance issues that the previous board had ignored. Property values have increased. The neighborhood feels different, more like an actual community than just a collection of houses with a tyrant enforcing arbitrary rules. I still think about my father sometimes, especially when I am working in my home office late at night and the house is quiet. He would have enjoyed hearing about the whole saga. He had always told me to stand up for myself and not let anyone push me around. I wish I could tell him I finally listened to that advice. Last month, someone new moved into the house 3 doors down from me. I saw them struggling to carry furniture inside and went over to help. We got to talking, and they mentioned being nervous about the HOA, having heard horror stories about overzealous boards making people's lives miserable. That used to be true here, I told them. But we cleaned house. The current board is reasonable. Just follow the basic rules, treat people with respect, and you will be fine. That is good to hear, they said, looking relieved. I was worried after reading some online reviews from a few years ago. Different leadership now, I assured them. If you ever have concerns or questions, feel free to reach out. I am on the Architectural Review Committee and I have learned more about HOA law than I ever wanted to know. They laughed. How did you end up on a committee? Most people try to avoid that kind of thing. I smiled. Long story. Let me just say that sometimes getting involved is the best way to prevent problems. It is strange how life works out. A year ago, I was sitting in a Houston hospital receiving threatening emails about a generator while my father was dying. I was angry, grief-stricken, and ready to burn bridges with the community I had just moved into. Now I am consulting for that same community, serving on a committee and helping new residents feel welcome. The generator incident could have gone very differently. If I had just paid the fines to make the problem go away, Patricia would have continued abusing her authority. The financial fraud would have continued. The community would have remained under dysfunctional leadership. Sometimes fighting back, even when it is exhausting and expensive, is the right choice not just for yourself but for everyone affected by the injustice. My attorney Sarah Chen has become a friend. We get lunch occasionally, and she updates me on other HOA cases she is handling. The stories are often frustrating, but sometimes darkly funny. Apparently, HOA disputes bring out the pettiest impulses in people. But they can also be situations where real legal principles matter and standing up for your rights makes a difference. You know, Sarah told me over lunch last week, your case has become a bit famous in HOA legal circles. I have had 3 attorneys contact me asking for advice on similar situations where a board was overstepping on generator use. You helped set a precedent. Happy to contribute to the body of HOA law, I said dryly. It is every homeowner's dream, she laughed. You handled it well. A lot of people would have either given up or gotten so angry they hurt their own case. You stayed calm, documented everything, and let the law work. I had good representation. That helps, but ultimately you did the work. You researched the laws, gathered the evidence, stood up at that board meeting when you could have just stayed silent. That is what made the difference. I appreciate Sarah's perspective, but I also know I was lucky. Lucky to have the resources to hire an attorney. Lucky to have the knowledge to research the legal issues. Lucky that the situation revealed Patricia's fraud, which led to real consequences. Not everyone facing HOA harassment has those advantages. That is part of why I volunteer my time now to help other residents understand their rights. The new board maintains a community website with clear information about the covenants, meeting schedules, financial reports, and contact information. I helped write a section explaining homeowner rights under Florida law, including protections for things like generators, solar panels, and reasonable property modifications. Knowledge is power, especially when dealing with governing authorities. The more residents understand their rights, the less likely a future board can abuse its authority the way Patricia did. The whole experience has also influenced my professional work. I specialized in cybersecurity before, but now I also consult on backup power systems and infrastructure resilience. Businesses and organizations need to think about what happens when primary systems fail, and many do not have adequate backup plans. My generator situation taught me a lot about redundancy and emergency preparedness that translates well to my consulting practice. In a weird way, I am grateful for the whole mess. Not for the stress during an already terrible time, and certainly not for Patricia's harassment, but for what came after. For the community connections I made, the professional opportunities that emerged, the sense of being part of something larger than just my individual household. I never expected to care about HOA politics or neighborhood governance. I certainly never expected to become someone that other residents come to with questions and concerns. But here I am, engaged and involved in a way that has made my life richer, even though it started from such a negative place. The generator still hums to life occasionally when the power flickers during thunderstorms, which happen frequently in Florida. Each time I hear it kick on, I smile a little. That machine was the catalyst for everything that followed. It kept my business running during a power outage, exposed HOA corruption, led to leadership change, and ultimately connected me to a community I am now proud to be part of. If I could go back and change things, prevent the initial conflict somehow, I am not sure I would. The pain of that time was real, compounded by my grief over losing my father. But the outcome was positive not just for me, but for everyone in Pleasant Valley. Sometimes the hard path leads to the best destination. I still have that first email from Patricia saved in a folder labeled HOA Drama. Every few months I scroll back and read it, just to remind myself how far things have come. Violation notice, excessive noise disturbance. $500 in fines for the first 3 days, plus $250 per day ongoing. Threats of legal action and foreclosure. All because I was running a legal generator during a power outage while dealing with a family emergency. The contrast between that threatening email and my current relationship with the HOA could not be more stark. I receive monthly payments for the electrical easement. I consult on community infrastructure projects. I serve on a committee helping shape community standards. And most importantly, I know that the current leadership would never harass a resident the way Patricia harassed me. Change is possible, even in systems that seem designed to resist it. But it requires effort, persistence, and a willingness to fight for what is right even when the fight is exhausting. It requires documentation, knowledge of the law, and sometimes the resources to hire good representation. And it requires a community willing to hold its leaders accountable when they abuse their authority. Pleasant Valley is a better place now than when I moved in. Not perfect, certainly. We still have the usual disputes about parking, noise, and architectural modifications. But we have fair processes for addressing those disputes and leadership that operates in good faith rather than on personal vendettas. My generator runs when it needs to, protecting my home and business during power outages. No one sends me threatening emails. No one trespasses on my property to take photographs. No one threatens foreclosure over legitimate emergency measures. It seems like a low bar for community governance, but given where we started, it represents real progress. James Wright stopped by my house last week to discuss a proposal for community-wide solar panel installation. Several residents are interested, but some are worried about HOA approval processes and whether the board might try to block or restrict such projects. "I want to make sure we get this right," James said as we sat on my patio reviewing the proposal. "Solar is protected under Florida law, but HOAs can still impose reasonable restrictions on placement and appearance. I want policies that protect property values without becoming barriers to renewable energy. The key is having clear guidelines published in advance," I told him. "When boards make arbitrary decisions case by case, that is when problems arise. If the standards are transparent and consistently applied, people can work within them." "Exactly. Could you help draft those guidelines? You have the technical knowledge and you have experience with how HOA overreach can hurt residents." I agreed, and we spent the afternoon working through the details. It felt good to be shaping policy in a positive direction rather than fighting against unjust rules after the fact. This is what functional community governance looks like. Leaders who listen to residents, consult experts, operate transparently, and try to balance individual rights with community standards. It is not dramatic or exciting, just competent people trying to do right by their neighbors. Sometimes I wonder what Patricia thinks about it all, sitting in prison knowing that her vendetta against me led not only to her own downfall, but to the exposure of her crimes and the transformation of the community she claimed to be protecting. I doubt she sees it as karma or justice. People like Patricia rarely accept responsibility for the consequences of their own actions. She probably still believes she was in the right and everyone else conspired against her, but her beliefs do not change reality. She committed crimes, abused her authority, and hurt people. She faced consequences. The system worked eventually, even though it took longer and cost more than it should have. I think that is the real lesson of this whole experience. Justice is possible but not inevitable. It requires effort from those being wronged. It requires good attorneys, clear laws, and communities willing to hold leaders accountable. It requires people to stand up and say, "This is wrong," even when it would be easier to stay quiet and pay the fine. My father died before any of this was resolved. He never knew about the lawsuit, the discovery of Patricia's fraud, or the positive changes that followed. But I think he would have been proud that I stood my ground. He taught me that principle matters, that you fight for what is right even when it is difficult. I fought, and I won. Not just in the legal sense of having the fines dismissed and receiving compensation. I won in the larger sense of helping transform a dysfunctional system into something better. That victory matters more than any judgment or settlement. The generator behind my house is just a machine, metal and wiring and mechanical components. But it became a symbol of something larger, the right of homeowners to protect their property, the limits on HOA authority, and the importance of standing up to those who abuse power. It kept running during that power outage, doing exactly what it was designed to do, regardless of Patricia's threats and demands. And when I refused to shut it down, when I stood firm on principle, despite the escalating fines and threats, it created a chain of events that exposed corruption and led to meaningful change. Sometimes the best response to an unjust demand is simply to refuse, to continue doing what is right regardless of the consequences. That is what I did. I let the generator run because it needed to run. I defended my rights because they were worth defending. I fought the legal battle because backing down would have been wrong. And in the end, justice prevailed. Pleasant Valley is home now, truly home in a way it was not when I first moved in. I know my neighbors. I contribute to the community. I have a voice in how we govern ourselves. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when authority overstepped, I pushed back effectively and made things better not just for myself but for everyone. The generator still sits on the far side of my property, ready to serve its purpose whenever needed. It is quieter than conversation, legal and permitted, protecting systems that matter. Just a machine doing its job, but also a reminder that sometimes standing firm on principle, even over something as simple as running a generator during a power outage, can make all the difference in the world.